Morning. Good morning and welcome to the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce's Business Breakfast Series. My name is Kimberly Nadeau-Linloff and I'm the President and CEO of the Mid-Maine Chamber, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here this morning. Before we begin our program, I want to thank our 2023 Business Breakfast Series sponsors. They include AT&T, Cross Insurance, New Dimensions Federal Credit Union, Nicholson, Michoud, and Nadeau, CPAs, O'Donnell, Lee, McCowan, and Phillips, attorneys at law, Sheridan Construction. Our print media sponsor is the Morning Sentinel. Our radio sponsor is 107.9 The Mix. I think, as you can see, our media work today. We have a full house. And our video sponsor is Kennebec Savings. Thank you for that. This breakfast is being live streamed. It's also taped and edited and then put up on local access channel through Spectrum Cable in the Greater Waterville area. And then, of course, we put it up on YouTube. So this is archived and people can watch it forevermore. So don't do anything silly. A reminder to please turn off your cell phones in consideration of our speakers. And there are evaluation forms on your tables. We would be grateful if you would complete that. You can just leave it there when you exit, or you can drop it on the registration table. It's entirely up to you. Who didn't listen to me about their cell phone? It's usually me. I also want to welcome our newest chamber members, Craig Strom, CFP Paralegal, and Northern Light Pharmacy, Penny Hill. We hope you were able to meet today's business spotlighters. We had Sam's Club and the Robin's Nest. The Robin's Nest, by the way, is winning our Small Business of the Year award for 2022. You've probably also seen recent media coverage in Maine Biz and other publications on the Robin's Nest, which is now at 173 Main Street, and the impact that moving on to Main Street in downtown Waterville has had on the growth of our business. It's been pretty spectacular. We love working with Robin. The other one, as I mentioned, is Sam's Club. They have specials on the table for Mid-Maine Chamber members. You can get a corporate membership. It's super affordable. It's so affordable that I broke down and got one for the chamber after 21 years. I'm actually not kidding. And it has an app. It has an app. And you just do that. Well, first you have Caitlin download it onto your phone, and then it comes up with the barcode. It's absolutely amazing. It is amazing. It's easier to use than I'm demonstrating, but barcode. We love it. We're already using it, and I highly recommend it. I want to thank Churchill today for being our entrepreneurial spotlighter today with Bingo Mountain Coffee. I hope everybody takes advantage of the samples that are on the table, and thanks to the Growth Council and the Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College for that. Upcoming chamber events. We would like to invite you to attend. We have our January Business After Hours on Wednesday, the 18th. It's from 5:30 to 7 at the Alfond Youth and Community Center, and it's also co-hosted by JMG, Jobs for Maine's Grads. That's at 126 North Street in Waterville. We are holding a ribbon cutting, as Churchill mentioned earlier, on January 19th at Holy Cannoli for Bingo Mountain Coffee. So we'd love to have you join us at that. That's located at 70 Main Street. It's at 3 p.m. on the 19th. There'll be a ribbon cutting on January 24th at Octagon Cleaning and Restoration, which is at 272 Skowhegan Road in Fairfield at 2 p.m. to celebrate its opening. The next business breakfast will be held right here in this room on February 9th from 7:15 to 9 a.m. Please join us as Bangor Savings Bank SVP David Pease presents on networking. So many of you know we are relocating our business-to-business showcase this year. It's not going to be in March. It's going to be in May. It's going to be at Thomas College. very close parking. I want to emphasize the parking and the proximity to the field house with the parking. So it's going to be in warmer weather, very ample parking, free admission per always. But if you guys do a trade show booth and you're like, yeah, my employees don't really know how to work it, you should come to next month's business breakfast, because David is awesome at networking, and he's a very good presenter. We've had him here several times, and he's back by popular demand, quite honestly. So I would really, really recommend you coming if networking isn't your strength. And you can register at midmainechamber.com. Today's panel will present on diversity, equity, and inclusion, understanding and addressing racism and bias in the workplace. Each panelist will have an opening statement with time for Q&A allotted at the conclusion of the presentation. When you're asking questions of the speaker, please wait until Cindy can run the microphone over to you, because as I mentioned, this is taped. It's also being live streamed, so people won't be able to hear the question if they don't have the mic. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Joy McKenna. She's our Director of Marketing. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Maine General Health. She's also past chair of the Chamber Board, and she's worn many, many other hats. And she is winning our Elias A. Joseph Award for Chamber Service this year. It's all you, Joy. Thank you.
Good morning. It's always great to see everybody here, and literally there's so many of my favorite people in the world in this room, so I'm just thrilled to be here, and this is going to be a great breakfast. I'm so happy to have such esteemed folks that are going to give us their experience and insight into DEI, which is a big issue for us and for the Chamber. We've long talked about increasing diversity in this area, bringing new folks in for all our businesses. So really excited. I'm going to introduce, give the bios for everyone first, and Ella's going to be our first presenter. Ella Bowman has been the Town of Oakland's town manager since 2014. Before this, she served as a police officer for the town for 15 years, a role that she states helped her develop relationships with the staff and local citizens and helped her with the transition to town manager. With more than 2 decades of public service to the town and one of the first members of the Kennebec Valley Diversity Coalition, she knows how much value DEI holds in Oakland. Over the past 3 years, Oakland, as well as over a dozen other municipalities, businesses, and nonprofits, adopted a diversity resolution, pledging to initiate changes and challenges to make our communities more welcoming and inclusive. In July of 2021, and at the age of 61, Ella came out publicly as a transgender woman. While living her life as her true self, she continues to be a community leader while working as the town manager for Oakland, and she continues her work helping others understand the real-life struggles and complexities of diversity. Ella has a history of leadership positions, having owned a local business for a 10-year span, as well as working in her first career as a leader for a large out-of-state lumber company. Ella holds 2 degrees in forestry and sits on many regional boards representing the town of Oakland. And Ella, you're going to have to add to your bio that you are getting the Mid-Maine Chamber's Municipality Employee Award this year. Our second presenter is going to be Stefanie Trice Gill. Stefanie is the founder and president of IntWork, a Maine-based boutique diversity company that matches employers with primarily diverse and immigrant professionals who want to live and work in Maine. Stefanie's family hosted Maine's first refugees from Vietnam back in 1975. She started to pursue study of Asian languages, participating in the first student exchange between Portland, Maine, and Shinagawa, Tokyo. I should have checked that one first, but okay, nailed it. She later left Maine to pursue her degrees. She is now fluent in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese. In 2003, Stefanie was hired to lead DEI efforts for the Queen's Public Hospitals after a lawsuit. She went on to found and co-lead New York City Public Hospital's citywide Health Equity Council and Office of Diversity. This work was featured on the front page of the New York Times Metro section and earned her multiple awards. When she returned to Maine to raise her family, Stefanie took part in Leadership Maine, learning about the skills gap and its impact on the Maine economy. She met many refugees and asylum seekers arriving in Maine and discovered that they have skills that our state needs. In addition to her consulting work on cross-cultural communication, she started building career connections for immigrant professionals. A few years later, at Women's Startup Maine, Stefanie brought together a team of immigrants and other women leaders to collaboratively develop the IntWork name and brand. Since its launch in 2019, IntWork has activated a passive candidate pipeline and successfully matched Maine employers with hard-to-find diverse talent, helping them build stronger technical and leadership teams. To learn more about Stefanie and IntWork, connect on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and view Stefanie's Maine hidden talent and the skills gap available at DisruptHR at www.intwork.com. And then our final presenter is Dr. Richard Biffle, and he is currently the professor of education and anthropology at Thomas College. He teaches courses in education, sociology, cultural anthropology, and archaeology. As part of his ongoing interest in research in science, technology, and mathematics, he designed and coordinates a program entitled Weaving a Tapestry of STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics, Explorers, Voyagers, and Thinkers. With the Center of Innovation and Education, that's with the Center of Innovation and Education. He's also the co-chair of the President's Task Force on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Dr. Biffle earned his Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science at the University of California, an MA in Education Administration and Leadership from Eastern Michigan University, and his PhD in Educational Anthropology from the University of New Mexico. He has lived and traveled the world and has an extensive background and experience in the areas of social justice, civil and human rights, equity and diversity training, community, organization and planning, teacher education, multicultural education, and geoethnographic research. That's a lot of stuff on your plate. Dr. Biffle's career in higher education has provided him numerous positions in education and the social sciences, as a faculty member, program administrator, department chair, and division chair. In addition, he is a former elementary and middle school teacher and elementary school administrator. Dr. Biffle is the past national president of the American Association for Teaching and Curriculum, past chairperson of Oregon Association Colleges of Teacher Education, and held numerous leadership positions in other professional and community organizations. Dr. Biffle has written numerous articles related to diversity, teaching and learning, and multicultural education. Next spring, he will complete his first two books, Class 1944K, Journey of a Lifetime, examining the lives of an aviation cadet class of the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. His second book, A Ethnographer's Guide to the Universe, sorry, that is a lot of words, explores the intersection of space, physical landscapes, and human expressions and interactions. Finally, he is an avid surfer, scuba diver, snowboarder, photographer, and enjoys jazz and classical guitar. You guys are just outstanding. So I'm going to go hide over here, and if Ella could start us off. Ella Bowman.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really impressed with the crowd here. I hope you really didn't come out to see me. These two here are amazing, and I'm really honored to be able to stand up here and be part of this crew to talk to you about the importance of DEI in our region, more in particularly bias. I'm not qualified to talk about racism, but I'm certainly qualified to talk about bias. I've experienced this from two different sides of the table. Growing up as a white male, I didn't know what bias really was. It was one of these deals where I've heard the word, but I really didn't pay attention to it because I never personally experienced it. But out as a community leader, a public servant, a town manager for the town of Oakland, yes, over there, the most conservative town in this region, and as a out transgender woman, I've had a rude awakening of what bias is. I've experienced when I walk into a room after I transitioned where people just didn't want anything to do with me. And these same people were people who worked with me every single day. It's so hard for people to understand somebody like me because they'd have no way to experience it. It's so foreign to people that they automatically think that we have an issue, which we don't. And regardless of how I craft my words or I deliver my message, it doesn't make any difference because people can't understand what this is. These are birth defects that I'm dealing with. So when I experienced the bias, I had to come up with a way so that I can work through this. I mean, I had to continue to do my job. Number one, I'm the town manager of town of Oakland. I need to keep my employment. The history or the circumstances for a transgender person is when you transition, you typically lose your family. Check, that happened to me. You can lose your housing, your jobs, and become homeless. This happens to so many people. And what this does is it brings on suicidal ideation. We are dealing with police officers at that point in time, and we're taken to the hospitals for evaluation. And now we're deemed that we have a mental illness because we couldn't live, because we were rewinding our lives and looking at everything that we had. And all we wanted to do was to bring our outside and our inside together to experience life just as you do. Short little explanation of what it's like to be a transgender person. So over time, when you spend time with somebody who's different, regardless of your skin color or your gender identity, the biases tend to go away. There's people in this room who were with me at Central Maine Growth Council meetings. The first day that I walked in as myself, as Eller, and those same people are with me today. When I walked into that room, I could feel the wall, but now I'm just like everybody else. And I'm going to pick on one person in here. Dawn, do you mind? I want you to be honest with me. The first day you saw me, how did you feel?
Being from Maine and not having exposure to that, it was certainly it was different for me. But in talking with my daughter and she explained, she lived in Dallas, and it really, you explained it well, and you made a good point about how you felt and you were genuine about it. And so, I guess I try to understand people and try to. But it was at first it was a little different, but I think since then, you're right, it's no different now. You and I had a good conversation at the last breakfast. You're comfortable around me. Yeah. This is what happens with bias. Biases can go away. Bias is primal. It's something we learned from from Ellen Miller at the last meeting, that there's 8 different types of bias. And the thing is, it's a protective mechanism. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of years ago, when animals used to roam the earth and eat us, we had to protect ourselves against the tribe that was on the other side of the mountain. And if that tribe had a red piece of paint on his face or their face, then we developed biases for that. It's no different now. It's primal. It's built into us. And it actually keeps us alive even today. You can actually compare certain types of bias to profiling. You're in an alley, New York City, Portland, Maine. You're walking from your place to get dinner to your vehicle. There's a group of kids there. They could be college kids. They could be gang kids. You don't know. But your fear factor automatically raises up. You're profiling those people, and it's actually a bias that's ticking off on that as well. So this is something that we all have to work on.
It's something that I had to work on when I realized what it was, because I still, even though I'm an out transgender person, I still experience what it's like to be biased. When we work with each other, it becomes our second family. When we're with our family, we learn about each other. So when we bring somebody who's either gendered differently or somebody whose culture is different, we tend to learn about their families, we tend to learn about their life, and we tend to realize that these people are normal just like we are. If you worked with me in the town of Oakland, you would most likely learn that I knew I was different from my earliest years. I knew that I was a girl. I would share that information with you if I was close enough. You'd learn that I searched for the most masculine jobs that I could find just so I could hide my secret. I knew from the earliest years that this, what I had, was so bad that people hated me. I learned that I spent more time and was more comfortable around girls. I struggled when I was in high school. I went to school for forestry knowing that if I worked in forestry, people wouldn't know my secret. When I got out of school, I bought a chainsaw. I knew that that would protect me. I worked for lumber companies, the most masculine jobs I can find. I became a police officer for the town of Oakland, and I was a good cop because I was compassionate, because I knew that most everybody had a secret. I certainly had a secret. Everybody struggles with something. I was certainly struggling with something. But as I got older, I lost my strength. I wasn't able to hide this. I searched my whole life to answer two questions. One, why was I like this? And two, why do people hate people like me? Why is that? We're not bad. We're creative. If you look back on some of the stuff that I've done throughout my life, you'd be saying, wow, that's pretty cool. And I did it as a transgender person. But it got to the point, as a town manager, it bothered me more and more because I realized that I had less years in front of me than I did behind me. And all I wanted to do was experience what it's like to be whole, just like all of you. Just like all of you. And that's what it's all about. People come up to me and say, sex and gender are the same thing. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. And you can't tell me it is if you've never experienced what it is. When you're a transgender person and you look in a mirror, it's like being in prison because you are not seeing yourself. This is not who you are. I went through 2 great marriages. My first wife of 10 years and my second of 29. But you know something? I got it. They knew about my gender dysphoria that I've been dealing with. It's been at my backside my whole life. It caused me to just kind of come into myself. I've remained friends with both of them, but it's tough. But you know something? I now know that life can be your fork. I now know what it feels like to not have gender dysphoria sitting on my shoulders. I now know what it feels like to be a professional transgender woman in a conservative community who respects me and accepts me. And some of them are really proud of me. Central Maine Growth Council, Kim at the Chamber, they've been amazing. I mean, nobody batted an eye. You know, I want to talk about DEI in this region. We've been hearing a lot about DEI lately. And there's a reason for that. This recipe that Colby College and the Chamber and the administration from the city of Waterville and all these businesses have built this cake, this incredible cake in the city of Waterville, which has had a positive impact of all the towns in the region. This cake has drawn attention from all over the country and possibly even the globe. But the problem we're experiencing is we've got businesses coming in. We have fewer employees than what we had before. Fewer employees than what we had before. And the reason for that is retiring seniors. Our workforce is down 20%. So diversity is a way to help fill those jobs. Diversity by bringing people in who may not look like us, by bringing culture into our workspaces. By bringing culture into our workspaces makes for a healthier workspace. So it pays to work on bias. It pays to work on DEI, to educate companies, to avoid litigation, and to go and have healthy companies. I'm going to leave you with one last thought. All of us in the room are in the people business. People come in different shapes and sizes. People come in different colors with different religious beliefs. They come with different sexual orientations and different identities. The one thing that we all have in common is we need each other. We need each other. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ella. And a reminder, there'll be time for questions at the end, but I'd like to call up Stefanie, please.
I'm honestly so moved by hearing Michaela speak, Ella, and really honored to be able to follow you. So I'll try. I forgot my clicker. Sorry. So I think that Ella really set the framework for the challenges that diverse people face in Maine. And I'll be focusing on the population that we work primarily with in IntWork. Let's start with economics. I always find it's helpful to pin diversity to economic needs and growth. And let's face it, in Maine, we cannot build the skilled workforce fast enough. So for every 13 STEM postings, there's one person available, and that's nationally. In Maine, it's worse, harder. So I know how hard it is for you to fill your positions. The other thing is that no metro area in the US has grown without immigrants for over 50 years. People like me, one kid, and people are dying more quickly than people are being born. So unless we can attract people to Maine, we just can't grow our businesses here. Also, it's interesting because sometimes people say, well, gosh, I know people who need good jobs. If we are giving jobs to immigrants, then we're taking jobs from Americans. The true fact is that we create 2.62 new jobs for each highly trained immigrant that we employ. So companies that otherwise might have to leave are able to grow when they get a quality engineer or an electrical engineer or a doctor. So this is really helpful to know when you hear that argument. Come back with this. And it's a great statistic from the Partnership for a New American Economy, which was founded by Michael Bloomberg to study immigration and the impact on the American economy. I will mention any single state, any single city in the country can join one of two organizations. Partnership for a New American Economy if you're a mayor or city administrator, and Welcoming America if you're a community organization trying to figure out how to make your town more welcoming. They're both amazing organizations with very low membership fees. So it's just a network. In Maine, we particularly struggle with diversity. We're the whitest state in the country, so that by definition means we're just attracting less people here. And So the skills gap is compounded by that gap, not only in diversity, but also in inclusion. Oftentimes when people do come here, they kind of get ghettoized. Oh, well, they live over there, or they're working in this industry. So if you watch the hidden talent video that we have on our IntWork homepage, you know, it's something I observed working in healthcare here, which was that there were more doctors, lawyers, PhDs, and engineers working cleaning floors than in, let's say, the average country club in Maine. So something's wrong. And there's some great research showing that the implicit bias that Michaela referred to is it's universal. It's something that we all, I mean, when we're a white HR manager, we imagine the ideal candidate is white in general. That's changing. But so people already in their mind are assuming their candidate will look like them. Same thing if you have a black HR manager, they're more likely to hire black people. It's true. It's just the way we are. But so it's nothing to feel guilty about. It's something to analyze, understand, and see how we can change. There's actually a great website called harvard.implicit.edu where you can test your biases. I think it's a lot of fun. It's private. Nobody knows your biases except you, and you can share them. But I will give you a cue. I tested as a woman who has a bias against women in non-traditional roles, and I spent 4 years as a railroad conductor. So I have a bias against myself. So go figure, right? It's not easy. We don't have to feel guilty about this. We just have to say, what's going on here? Oh, yeah, that's an early education. My mom ranting about how working moms weren't caring enough, or latchkey kids. I was in the early 70s, right? So that's stuff that stuck with me. It doesn't make sense. I don't believe in it, but it's a bias I still carry. It's also worth knowing that a study was done called Are Emily and Greg more employable than Lakeisha and Jamal? And similar studies have been done for male-female hiring, but identical resumes, one with a black-sounding name and one with a white-sounding name, the white-sounding name, they say, gets 50% more. Anecdotally, it's a lot more than that. And if you look at African candidates, long African names, not only is, okay, this is a black person, but these other questions. Do they speak English? Will they understand my culture? Will their degree be relevant? Those are some of the things we'll talk about today. So here's the story that inspired. The real start of IntWork came from me working at Maine Med, where I was overseeing interpreter services. And I was walking to the cafeteria, and I saw this very professorial-looking man holding a broom and kind of taking a pause, gazing into the distance, discouraged. And I walked up to him, and I guessed. I was like, okay, it's either French or Portuguese. So I said, Senhor, eu preciso saber, Portuguese, que você fez no seu país? Porque eu sei que você não limpava chão. Which means, sir, I need to know what you did in your country because I know you weren't cleaning floors. And he looked at me with those eyes, and he said to me in perfect English, I'm a geophysicist. And that moment changed me and him forever. We just stood there gazing at each other. We both got tears in our eyes. And I said, please give me your number. I don't know what I can do, but maybe someday I'll call you. That was it. And so on to Women's Startup. I was got together a group of women. We had already gotten some state funding for helping raise awareness about immigrant professionals, but we realized they weren't getting into the workforce. So we took it to Maine Startup and said, well, employers have been out of the loop. This has been kind of a social service thing. It hasn't been something where employers are asked, what do you need? And when I was trying to reach out to employers, they were saying, well, we mostly hire for our own demographic. Thanks. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, well, this person lives here. Yes, but we only hire for our own demographic. And I was like, oh, that's what they mean. And so this is, we brought this together and said, I think we need to, let's get in with employers and find what they really want and need. And let's not make them feel ashamed about what they want and need, and let's show what we can do. Let's give them what they want. So we started a boutique diversity recruitment firm that basically looks at, meets with employers, says, what do you need? And if they say, well, I really need someone like this, and they can't have a strong accent because we're doing phone, I say, great, we'll find you someone like that. And we get them their first immigrant or diverse candidate who has exactly what they need, who makes them happy. And what we had seen before that was people would sometimes say, oh, could you help this person get a job? They don't speak English well, but they used to do this. And they'd get into the company, and the company would be like, boy, that was tough. I don't think we can help them anymore. So we needed to find people who could help you rather than to have you feel you're helping them. We know you need people who can add value to your company from day one. And there's plenty of people who can. So it's just a question of vetting, selection, and matching, culture and matching skills. So this is our team. We're building our team, and these are the types of positions we've mostly placed: accounting, geology, environmental, trades, engineers, tech, leadership roles. The average candidate is working in maybe a home health job or a cleaning job, a factory job, and increases their pay by 40%, and many buy a house within a year. So candidates who otherwise, for a while, Maine started to have asylum seekers and refugees come in, and then after 5 or 6, 7 years, they'd say, I'm not getting in my career, and they'd start leaving the state. So part of IntWork was saying, let's see if we can, I actually said to a whole group of engineers, give me 1 year, I know you're all planning to move, give me 1 year. And started placing them and was able to retain people in that way. Because we need them even more than they need us, perhaps. But it's pretty mutual. It's a win-win. These are more of the placements. And you'll notice that unlike a program that only places immigrants or a recruiting agency that only does diverse people, we decided we weren't going to eliminate anyone from the pool. So you'll see how we did that. It didn't feel right to say Irish need not apply at IntWork. You know what I mean? The old white male need not apply. So we've placed everyone, people who look like all of us in this room. But 80% are usually foreign-born. So let's see, we get word of mouth referrals. So in an economy where candidates can't be found anywhere, candidates are on a waiting list to be seeing IntWork. So we have a lot of people. It's just finding the right employer. The more clients we have from companies, the more, and we're going to be doing a lot of work in Waterville. So we're working to create, thanks to the work of Thomas College and Bill Alfond, we're working at ways to be able to bring more people to Waterville. So one thing to know is with foreign, immigration in Maine is a lot of asylum seekers, refugees. So one thing to know is all those folks are on track for asylum. Which will then get them a green card, which will be citizens. So we really don't have a lot of undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants in Maine. Asylum seekers are legal on path to citizenship. So there's not much for employers to worry about. Picture didn't show up here, but we make sure the candidates we send are fluent. And quite a lot of questions come up about foreign credentials. There's no question. A 4-year degree is a bachelor's. Master's is a master's. So don't worry if you see a degree from a foreign country. We do video intros for when really most employers find if they like someone by meeting someone. This is during COVID. This is an Afghan civil engineer who sent a video to an employer. Due to COVID, they couldn't be able to meet in person, and they were so excited. He's been working there for almost a year now. When there is a gap, sometimes we find people who have maybe an accountant, but they haven't done accounting in the US, or a doctor and they haven't done work here. It's not a great example because doctors are more complicated, but possible. We do internships. So if you have someone that you say, well, it looks like they could be a fit, but how will we know? We just let you work together. We don't even charge a recruiting fee for that first 3-month period. We just say work together. And if it works out, great. If not, you say, well, it was an internship and it's completed, good job, but we're not moving forward. So I just want to show, this is a picture of a bunch of engineers. We now have dozens, close to hundreds of engineers on track for licensure. It's a simple process, a 6-hour test, with a foreign degree. And so these are just, I'm going to flash through some success stories. Architects, wetland engineers, quality engineers. Employers come back for more. This is an employer who said they wanted a PE with 10 years experience. So we sent them a white guy from Wisconsin who was moving here with his wife. A year later, I had lunch with him, and he said, I'd like to have another I'd like to have someone I can train and mentor. So the company brought on another person, this time from Iraq. So husband and wife teams both get IntWork jobs. The woman on the left is a thermal engineer. The man on the right is now the accountant for the Portland Public Schools. They bought a house. Another husband and wife team, lawyer, who was in charge of procurement for all of the UN in Burundi, and her husband, who was a systems engineer, but couldn't find a job in Maine for 3 years. So he was working in home health for 3 years, just got a job with one of our clients a year ago, and now just got a promotion, is making over $100,000, and they're now going to buy a house. And they are Mainers, and they love Maine, and they want to build this state and this economy as much as you and I. So thank you for keeping your minds open, and for creating more welcoming spaces for diverse people in Maine.
Thank you, Stefanie. And last but certainly not least, our esteemed professor, Dr. Biffle.
Talk about tough acts to follow. Life is a caravan of dreams, explorations, adventures, ideas, thoughts, experiences. That's what I learned when I was growing up. In an incredible household of two extraordinary parents. I was asked to come here by Michelle from Thomas College to share my story. Talk story, as we say back in Hawaii, which is another story. But I think that what I've heard from my two esteemed colleagues this morning, it's important to understand there's more similarities than differences. But we tend to be steeped in the tradition of difference. And I always find that kind of curious, ironic, and not translatable, because I have students who have dreams, who have aspirations, who want to do things, but they don't know how to do it. Because so often they're told, you can't do that. Our most critical asset in this country, in this world, are our children. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So that's not a negotiable conversation in my view. I learned that in my own household. A couple of things about who I am. I'm fourth generation Coloradoan. My family's from Colorado. My mother and father are from a small community called Pueblo, Colorado. The only thing you could do in Pueblo, Colorado was either get out or work at the steel mill. And again, when they were growing up, they had aspirations about what they wanted to do. My father always wanted to fly. Seemed kind of odd during the Depression that my father wanted to fly airplanes. But that's all he ever wanted to do. My mother was a concert pianist. All she ever wanted to do was perform. Incredible artists. Incredible mind, both of them. I could go into a lengthy conversation more about them, but I think there's something you need to understand about the home. The home is the place where our dreams can be nurtured, supported, or candidly destroyed. I grew up in a household that if I had listened to all the studies and the research that was done when I was in school, the things that happened to me and my sister should not have happened at all. Because black people weren't supposed to be able to do those things. My father was a Tuskegee Airman. My father was a fighter pilot in the United States military for 32 years. He flew in combat in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Shot down once in Vietnam. Lived to tell about it. Tells you something about tenacity, determination, and no, he wasn't the kind of person that felt he was going to get captured by anybody because he wasn't going to do that. If my mother and father hadn't gotten married the day after Pearl Harbor was attacked, my mother was a student at the University of Denver on her way to working on a law degree. She would have been the first African-American woman in the state of Colorado to be graduated from a law school. She deferred her dream because that's basically what women did back in that day. When I was 5 years old, my parents decided a very important step, and we decided to move to Casablanca, Morocco, where we spent 5 years. My father was a NATO instructor. He trained NATO pilots from literally all over the world. Became renowned for his ability not only to fly, but to be an instructor. My mother taught English as a second language because she too spoke 4 languages. We traveled throughout the Middle East, we traveled throughout Europe, we traveled throughout the UK. When my sister and I came back to the United States, we spoke 4 languages. We spoke French, Arabic, German, and American. English was the 4th language we spoke. All the time we lived overseas, and from the age of 5 basically to 9 years old, we experienced no discrimination, no racism, no prejudice, no bias. None of that. As soon as we got back to the States, though, we were confronted with it as soon as we landed in New Jersey. Going to Colorado, my father drove basically from Trenton, New Jersey to Denver, Colorado straight. And we wondered why, because we had lived in Europe and we had driven all over Europe with no problem, stayed in various places, etc., and were welcomed and accepted. It wasn't until years later that my mother told me the reason we didn't stop is because your father was afraid of what would happen to us if we did stop. There were places that would not accept us. That was a tough pill to swallow later on in my life. But it didn't stop me from doing a number of things that I wanted to do. I'm impressed by the number of engineers and ex-engineers and people in the room. Because when I went to UCLA, basically I wanted to be an architect. Life is a caravan of dreams. My first class, I had an engineering professor who looked at me several times and said, "Why are you here?" And after saying it 5 or 6 times, came up to me and quietly said, "How many black people do you know that are architects? You should be doing something else with your life." My classmates all snickered and laughed because they thought it was funny. I didn't know at the time there was a principal architect in Los Angeles who happened to be black, who happened to have designed LA International Airport, many of the homes in the Hollywood Hills, etc. I didn't know that because that wasn't taught in school. I didn't know anything about my background other than the fact that blacks basically were enslaved. When I became an anthropologist, one of the things I did is I did a discovery journey to find out what plantation our family came from. And with the help of a friend of mine from the University of Minnesota, we found out that plantation in Tennessee. Biffle is an unusual name, and as I was listening to what you were talking about, Stefanie, about jobs that I've applied for and stuff, Biffle is confounding because Biffle is not necessarily identified with being black. Williams, Jefferson, David, I mean, you know the rap, but not Biffle. So when I showed up to interviews and things like that, people were often perplexed. But I found out those kinds of things early on in life. When you talk about bias and unbiased, and I was listening to her talk about the things that she went through. Imagine what it's like to be the only student of color in a classroom. All throughout junior high and high school, that's my sister and I. bias, unconscious, and conscious bias. 8th grade history class, we're studying basically historical kinds of things related to the world. We started a lesson on Greece. The teacher, Mr. R, basically started explaining to us about Greece and started talking about Athens and started talking about the Acropolis, the Parthenon, and other kinds of things. Drew a picture basically of the Acropolis, and the buildings were all in the wrong place. Why did I know that? Because I had been to the Acropolis. I had drawn all the buildings at the Acropolis. And I did something that my parents still used to bother me with sometimes. I also borrowed some marble from the Acropolis. My mother always said, at some point the Greek police and Interpol are going to find you. I try to explain to the teacher basically, when he asks questions, does anybody have any questions or comments, that things were in the wrong place. And of course, what happened was very curious. He looked at me and he said, how would you know? How would somebody like you know what that looks like? Bias, stereotype. It didn't end there, because the next thing I knew, I found myself in the vice principal's office. And those of you that are old enough to remember the Board of Education that was given corporal punishment, I got 3 SWATs. Each SWAT, I was told that people like you need to understand what their place is in this society. People like you need to understand you can't go through life lying about who you are and what you've done. People like you have no place in our schools. You need to be in your own schools with each SWAT. I didn't cry. I went home and my mother looked at me and she said, that's all right, your father's home. He'll take you back to school tomorrow. The reason I share this story is every now and then things happen and people have to show up for you. My father was a very dignified officer, an incredible pilot, very private. The next day he got me up, he put on his uniform, we went to the office, and all of a sudden when we walked in the office, people were stunned. United States military officer. That was my father. Had a meeting with the vice president, and that's what I called him, the vice president, because that's basically how he acted, the vice principal. Meeting lasted about 20 minutes. The vice principal came out, the principal came out. The vice principal apologized to everybody in the office. Called the teacher in and told the teacher that he should apologize to me, because he found out that I had taken all kinds of pictures when we were at the Acropolis. I had the appropriated marble. That's my life story, ladies and gentlemen. Every place I have been, I've had to prove myself. So when you're talking about diversity, education, and inclusion, you have to understand we are constantly in a situation where we have to prove ourselves. I've worked at many institutions of higher education. I've had to prove myself. When I was working on my doctorate, all of a sudden my research was scrutinized. We have to prove ourselves. Constantly have to prove ourselves. When I moved to Maine, and I moved here from Hawaii 10 years ago, which is another story. Why would I leave Hawaii and come to Maine? You have to prove yourself. First time I went into a Shaw's, I was basically standing in line and doing things, and a woman behind me, she looked at me and she said, well, what are you doing here in Waterville? I said, I just took a job. Well, what is it that you do? And I looked at her and I said, my job. Well, what is your job? I said, I'm a professor. I'm a professor of education and anthropology. I have a PhD in anthropology. Well, what's it like working at Colby? I said, well, it's interesting because I work at Thomas. Well, I didn't know Thomas hired people like you. And I said, well, welcome to the new day. But I say that because I am the first and only African American professor to ever be hired and teach at Thomas College in the history of Thomas College. You constantly have to prove yourself. So when we talk about DEI, I can tell you 100,000 stories. I can tell you stories related to what you were talking about, my first elementary teaching job. 41 students, 5th, 6th grade, rural community, Southern California. 18 different languages, 17 different cultures. Those of you that are old enough remember the boat people from Southeast Asia. Half of my class were students from Southeast Asia. Dumped, basically. So when we talk about these kinds of things, and one of the reasons, and I've been a civil rights worker, I've been a human rights worker. I was on the national staff of the NAACP, worked with 8 states, basically, Mississippi being the worst, threatened by the Klan, those kinds of things. I can tell you all kinds of things, but one of the things that I will share with you just really quickly, if you're going to invite somebody to dinner, then make sure you feed them. If you're going to invite somebody to your community, make sure that you have the support systems built in place. I have students that are not from Maine, basically, who will not venture out into the Waterville community because they're afraid, because they've heard stories. But last and certainly not least, I will say, if you're going to recruit professionals and you're going to recruit professionals of color, make sure you welcome them. I've been in Waterville for 11 years. I have never been invited to anyone's house for dinner.
Thank you, Dr. Biffle. All right, that is a lot of, we got 3 great presentations covering a lot. I'm sure there's a ton of questions out there. Does someone want to start us off? And Cindy will be coming around with a microphone. Oh, Dawn?
I just wanted to, now that Ella caught me off guard earlier, but I just want to say that I have watched Ella transition in her job, and I think it's amazing to me that the town of Oakland has been really great with you. You always did a great job prior to, and I think continue to do that and a great job. And I just want to say that I'm impressed by that, but I got to understand it could not have been easy. And what is the most difficult thing you went through?
Can everybody hear me? Thank you, Don. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. I set you up a month ago when we were sitting there talking, so I just want to let you know that this was planned, and I was hoping you were going to show up. Because I wouldn't have had anything if you hadn't showed up. Yeah, it's the hardest thing that I've had to deal with is bringing my staff behind me. Oakland, we have 115 employees between full and part-timers, and as you can imagine, everybody from every part of the political spectrum. So it took a lot of conversations, and it took a lot of tears, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a tough road for a while. My first couple of months, I thought, God, I'm going to be unemployed. This is not going to work out well for me. But I had done enough pre-training to get people accustomed to what transgender people were all about beforehand, because I knew that I was going to have to raise my hand and come out. So I think that helped me a little bit. But it's it's been my staff was my hardest. Not anymore. We wrote the book on how to transition as a public official in a time of discord.
Already, that the chamber has been really focused on diversity and trying to make sure that we are seen as a welcoming community. We've got some things that we're working on now that will sort of like a marketing plan around that. Do you have any advice for us on how we would approach this with DEI in mind to make sure, to Dr. Biffle's point, that we're also walking the talk? But anything that you could help with that would be great.
I think one of the things you have to be is genuine about why you want people to come here. And I understand, workforce development issues and the kinds of things that are happening in Maine, because they're happening in many other places as well. But in order to be a welcoming community, you have to be a passionate and committed community. It's not just recruiting somebody and then say, welcome to Waterville, for example, for 1 week, and then suddenly you abandon them. I can speak to that as a professional who's been recruited by a number of colleges and universities. Oh, they always want you there because it just checks off that box. Or boxes. And then all of a sudden, it's crickets. Mm-hmm. And you begin to wonder why. But after a while, you begin to get the feeling that's just the way it is. Trying to establish yourself in a community, where to a certain degree, it doesn't feel like your welcome is challenging enough. I was told the first week I was here that I was an outsider. Gee, I hadn't heard that before. But it was just the way it was stated. I've lived here for almost 11 years, in Waterville. And each week is a challenge. And that's just straight up, because people who know me, Mike Duguay knows me, Lisa knows me. I talk truth. I don't try to soft pedal it, because I've seen too much of that. So you have to be genuine in terms of your approach. Yes, it's like mission statements, and I can tell you about strategic plans, hundreds of them. I can tell you about when we put together the Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Thomas College, and how challenging that was. Originally, we only had 17 people that even wanted to participate. Now I'm proud to say we have 44 people on that council. 3 board members. David Peace actually is one of them. Faculty, students, staff, alums. They didn't know what they didn't know, but once they saw us doing kinds of things, now they want to do things. They want to really be involved in the process. They want to engage themselves. Because again, 75% of our students come from Maine, 25% from outside of Maine. But there's more similarities than differences. So we have to be able to have collaborations and partnerships and cooperations. I would challenge all of you in terms of business leaders to come over to Thomas at some point and talk to our students about life, realities, workforce, because they're afraid. They're afraid they're not going to be good enough when they get out there. So I think beyond plans, beyond mission statements, beyond diversity statements, there has to be a genuine commitment on the part of people to engage people and welcome people to a community. There's a book that somebody gave me, and some of you may know it, called The New Mainers by Patton Island. I recommend that everybody get that book because it talks about professional people from immigrant populations who moved here and the challenges that they face, where they came from, and the kinds of things that happen when they're here. When I give that book to my students are astonished.
I want to mention, I've seen a number of marketing campaigns that have been focused on trying to bring people to different regions of Maine and to Maine overall, and usually, unfortunately, they fall short. And it's because they start with a marketing company, instead of with community conversations. And I think especially if you're looking about making Waterville more, the Waterville region more welcoming to people of color and immigrants, that it's really important to have those conversations. The people that Dr. Biffle's talking about who don't want to come here because that list of people need to be in this room in a conversation monthly, or focus groups, or focus groups, small focus groups, and then inviting people who want to step forward to do more into a committee, a steering committee, a welcoming committee. We did some work like that in Southern Maine, bringing together, there was actually a whole effort to, a diversity effort, and there was a committee, I think, of 30 people with absolutely not, about making a region more welcoming to immigrants, and there was not one immigrant in the room. 30 people had been meeting for over a year. And so I offered to convene a new committee called the Welcoming Committee. This was an invite-only group, and I said, well, since nobody here wants to be on the Welcoming Committee, can I invite people from outside the group? I then went out to all the different immigrant communities, asked them to each send at least one representative. We formed subcommittees on different aspects of welcoming, economic inclusion, social inclusion, basic needs, and marketing. And then based on those conversations, came up with a gap analysis for each subgroup, brought that back to the committee, and then they said, did your committee meet? I said, oh, yes. And then we were told that there was no space in the meeting for them to present, so I would have to present the findings. And I said, it's not that way. There has to be room for immigrants in a meeting around immigrants. So inclusion is so hard for us in Maine, but I would say those conversations can be really aided by an organization like Welcoming America. We joined Welcoming America, I think at the time, for about $50, and they sent consultants to sit in on our group. We had Alan Karen in the room, we had Luann Ballesteros, we had Melanie from the Chamber, and we had some really amazing discussions about what to do. And that, so having those conversations where we had literally everybody, every community in the region had representatives come and were saying, no, I don't think you've seen this. I don't think you understand this. Because otherwise the marketing companies starting out, there's been some terrible campaigns. I mean, they say, Maine, and then they show like a Japanese woman. And I'm like, well, we don't have a lot of Japanese people in Maine, but we have a lot of Africans. How come there's no Africans in any of these pictures? And so, when you ultimately do that marketing campaign, it should have the faces of people who really live here saying, I made it. Maine's okay. It has to be something genuine, and it's very hard to do that without having those preliminary conversations.
Hi, my name is Ames Saraway. I own the Frame Makers here in Waterville. My pronouns are they, them. Ella, I want to let you know, listening to you was very hard for me because I felt everything that you had said. And I get it. And I just want to let you know, thank you for speaking. When I first learned about transgender women, or transgender in general, was at Thomas College in 1999. I was working at the library at late night, and a gentleman came in who was a music fanatic like I was, gave me a record of the Well-Tempered Synthesizer by now Wendy Carlos. And that opened my eyes. And since then, things have come into place for me. And I just want to let you know, thank you so much for stepping up, being brave to talk about and share, what we go through. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
Amy.
Should have scheduled a longer breakfast this time. I hate to cut this off, but we are over time. I want to thank you all for being here and being so candid and so honest and frank. Very grateful for that. There are evaluation forms on your table, as I mentioned. Please complete those if you would. We have some fantastic door prizes this morning, donated by some of the spotlighters. First is a $10 gift card and travel mug donated by Aroma Joe's. That's going to Kristen Overton from Skills Inc. We have a $10 Sella Tea gift card, Sella Tea Cafe gift card donated by Sella Tea Cafe, and that's going to our friend Hunter Barton from KVCC. Is Hunter still here? Yep, good. A $25 gift card donated by Holy Cannoli is going to Sean Mishu from Cunningham Securities. Backed by popular demand, we have some Valley Spring Essentials products, a cucumber melon bath bomb and an energy shower steamer. And that's going to Jim Chapman from KVCC. Next, we have a swag bag. It's golf balls, a lantern, Bluetooth radio donated by Maine State Credit Union. And that's going to Kathy Ames from Cross Insurance. We have a $50 valued floral arrangement donated by the Robin's Nest, and that's going to Nikki Desjardins from Central Maine Motors Auto Group. We have a $100 value, 15-minute mini photo session, including 5 edited digital images and print release, donated by No Negatives Photography. And that's going to Lynanne Gauntz from Central Maine Motors Auto Group. It's a lucky table back there. And then last but not least, we have, what do we have, Cindy? We have a $250 value donation by Sam's Club. I don't know what it is. It's a drill thingy, and it's stuff. It's stuff. It's stuff. A circulus on other, yeah. Drill driver. Yeah. At any rate, it's going to Dwight Littlefield from the Maine Department of Education, Career and Technical Education. So let us know. Yeah. If you want your business to be a business spotlighter and highlighted at one of these breakfasts, it is free to do. You just have to donate a door prize and let me know what it is. Yeah, and you can be a spotlighter. We have 3 spotlighter spots in every single breakfast. We also do chamber chatters. Those are free. So if you want us to come to your business or do an interview in our business, they're Facebook videos that last 5 to 7 minutes, and we'd love to do one. Mike Duguay just did one for Wave, our entrepreneurial system, and yeah, they get hundreds of views and likes and shares. And last but not least, I am gonna, oh, you already did it. Okay, Cindy's done it. Thank you again for speaking today. This concludes today's forum. We hope to see you back in February with David Pease. Bye-bye.